focusing in and blocking out, maybe. Block out, maybe is the word I'll use, right? But where am I going with this? I feel like lifting is a really, really good way to take care of stress in your life. I feel like a lot of times, at least for me, when things feel like they're out of control, I know the gym, my physique, all that stuff is the one thing I can control. It's the one thing that's in my power. It's in my favor. It's my genetics, everything. Everything leading up until now, it's in my favor to be a bodybuilder compared to most people because, again, genetics are just 1 in a million. So there's too many specific things that I'm going to continue to do and have been doing that no one else just does it, you know? There's a certain way to lift, and that's what differentiates beginners from advanced, okay? So everyone has to adopt their own style of lifting, okay? Everyone has to adopt their own style of lifting. And of course, depending on how you lift, depending on how you actually do stuff in the gym and how it actually feels, right? You could get more gains than other people. But where am I going with this, okay? I feel like a lot of people will get upset or they'll get angry or they'll want revenge or they'll want vengeance and they'll go to the gym and they'll put their all into it, meaning their muscle and their mind, right? They're trying to get rid of those distractions. They're trying to improve themselves. They're trying to one up themselves. And so a lot of times I feel like when you're lifting with so much negative energy, with so much negative emotion, with so much hatred in your heart, and that's all that's going into your reps, I feel like that's not the way to do it. You know, I feel like that's not the way to go about it. And well, doesn't that sound like it'll make you push harder and stuff like that? I'll tell you my experience with it. I feel like when you can actually focus and think about the actual workout, the actual reps, the actual muscles being used in your exercise, I feel like that's when you make the most gains. Because again, lifting is more than just science. Lifting has to do with how you feel, okay? Not enough people say that, but lifting has to do with how you feel. And so if you're going into all of your reps, but again, you're just not focused, all you can do is be angry and put as much energy into it as possible instead of actually using that energy in a way that'll give you more reps, more stimulus, better form. Do you see where I'm going with this? I feel like intensity is like it's a term that's thrown around a lot in gym, right? In bodybuilding. But I feel like intensity really has many different meanings to it because all of my lifts are intense. There isn't reps that I'm doing that it doesn't feel like the muscle's gonna explode, right? But I've learned that that's the correct feeling. That's what it feels like when I'm growing and it's safe and I don't get injured, right? So the thing is, when you're using your mind, when you're using your brain, and when you're focusing on what you're actually doing, right? And look, let me tell you something about what blocking out can do, okay? Because you can have a whole entire shitty day. You could have the worst day of your life. But if as soon as you get into the gym, you put on your music, you put on your headphones, you do something to help you focus, and you actually start performing your reps, you don't start thinking about the terrible day you had, right? You're looking in the mirror, and what you're focused on is how well you're moving the weight, right? Again, you need to be focused on how well you're moving the weight because it's not enough to just lift, to have shit form, to do it terribly, to not do it correctly, because it's not enough to just go in the gym and grab the weights. Anyone can pick up weights, but there's so many different ways of actually moving the weights, right? There's a big difference between just picking up and actually being able to move it. And so that's what you really want to be focused on in the gym is you want to be able to focus on how you're actually moving, how you're actually making the weight that's 45, 90, 135 pounds look so easy, right? Because certain people, they, you know, when it looks easy, it's because they have great form, they're doing everything correctly, but they're also, because they do so much correctly at once, they're able to be crazy strong and make gains off of that and be able to recover compared to the average person, compared to the person that's not working out correctly, okay? So the biggest thing is you want to be good at making it look easy. Because yeah, it took a while for me to get form down. No one wants to practice form. It feels weird when you start switching things up, but guess what? You need to have good form before anything because the muscle has to move a certain way. Think about what's the point of having good form? It's to make sure the muscle moves in the right way, okay? Because if your form is shit and the muscle moves in the wrong way, then you pull something, then you tear something, then it's over, okay? But once you have good form and you learn what a pump actually feels like, because again, a lot of people, yeah, working out hurts. Of course it hurts. Like it doesn't feel easy. It doesn't feel good necessarily, but like once you get used to it, once your muscles get stronger, that's the only way you get used to it. Once you get stronger, it starts to feel easier and easier while you're making progress, right? So of course, 30 pounds was heavy for me at one point, but I dealt with it. I dealt with how uncomfortable it felt. I dealt with the process of growing. And now when I grab 30 pounds, it feels like nothing. And I can grab heavier than 30 pounds, right? So again, in having good form and in being able to be comfortable with the pain from bodybuilding, from what pumps feel like, from what being sore feels like, just more and more indicators that you're actually stimulating your muscle in a way. Again, notice I didn't say growing because you can overdo it. You can work out and take 0 rest days, or like you can do super high volume and whatever, and you'll still feel super sore, but I don't know. There's a fine line between soreness and injury, you know? So the overall goal is to reduce soreness, of course, and just try to be sore free every day, even though that's not possible for most people. Or maybe it is. Depends on how much you can actually tolerate of like soreness in your body. But that is how you have to lift. These are the things you have to do to be able to be good at bodybuilding. Because think of all the principles I just explained to you. You need to actually apply that to everything. So you can, yes, only pick certain muscle groups and not do other muscle groups, and you'll lack and you'll suffer from it because it'll reflect in your physique. But once you get comfortable and once you get stronger and used to the idea that, you know, working out, was that a little bug? Yeah, a little. Once you get used to the idea of, you know, fully training your body, and again, I'm basically explaining how to go from beginner to like very advanced intermediate, because I'm not even saying everything you have to do to actually be able to put on muscle correctly. But if you guys want to know more about that, let me know in the comments down below. Let me know if you enjoyed this video. I'm about to hit a lift. We're going to look huge and apply all the principles I just explained. So I'll see you.